Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
In hockey years, Shea Weber is considered ridiculously old by now. And in actual human years, Evan is ancient. So happy birthday, you old bastard.
Thank you. Yes. I don't feel older. I just feel sorer. That's how I've explained it so far.
Synonyms, really.
Yeah.
On brand, Evan showing up red in the face because you spent most of your weekend staring directly at the sun, I'm sure.
Yes. We spent 95% of yesterday in the sun baking and wake surfing because our friend's dad got a new toy.
Oh, man. Friends, rich parents are really what make your summers worth it.
Yes, very much so.
Well, which is a problem for us because Evan is our rich friend.
I cannot afford a cottage. I will say that much from what I've learned this past weekend.
Yeah, it's because you bought into the Kitchener housing market. You're going to be bankrupt for the next 20 years.
That's the plan, yeah.
Happy birthday, Evan. And if you're ever supremely annoyed by me and the amount of asks I make of you before we start each episode, just remember, I remembered your birthday and not Brad's. So all on my own, too.
Did you remember his birthday or did you see my post in the group chat first?
I actually, no, I had it in my calendar. I have evidence in my calendar. And then I saw that you beat me to it because you wake up at a time that a person with kids wakes up. So,
That's pretty much a synopsis for the entire podcast right there.
Essentially, yeah. Congratulations on moving on to the pseudo conference finals, Shea Weber. The rebirth of the Shea Weber bit, thanks to our interview with Ken Daniels, has been a hysterical full circle for this podcast.
I still can't believe he said it or thought it.
It's not even just that he said it. He interrupted himself mid-answer to point it out. He was giving a really poignant, entertaining answer about sleeping, living his dream, listening to Foster Hewitt going to sleep, and then just stopped and said, "Wow, Evan looks like Shea Weber." It was perfect.
Yeah.
I tried to keep myself reasonably composed because I didn't want to do a full-on ugly laugh in front of Ken Daniels, but it was hard.
Yeah, the messages in the group chat immediately were, much more representative about how much we were freaking out. Anyhow, I'm sure we have a lot of new listeners right now based on the response to that episode. So for all of you new listeners and returning listeners, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. I'm Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
And Evan is turning 30, 70, 80, 90 years old today.
Yes, actually, all the above.
Yeah. For those of you who have missed it, our last episode is just a full hour and a half, virtually uncut interview with Ken Daniels. We want to thank everyone for your incredible response to that. Obviously, Ken was a phenomenal interview guest to have. We mean it when we say we can't wait to have him on again and work with him in the future. But Ken gave us insights we could never have hoped for or dreamed for about the Jamie Daniels Foundation, his time as an announcer, inside stories about the Red Wings, about Mickey Redmond. It was, we've been fortunate to do a lot of really cool interviews on this show. And that was, as a lot of you have pointed out, one of our best, if not the best that we've ever, been lucky enough to do. So, our previous episode, Ken Daniels, the interview, please go listen to it. And on that note, I do want to take this chance to call out the primary reason why we had Ken on the show, which was the Jamie Daniels Foundation. The more we talk about substance use disorder, the faster we can end the stigma and get support to those in need. The Jamie Daniels Foundation is a children's foundation initiative and was established in memory of Jamie Daniels and founded by Jamie's father and Red Wings lead announcer Ken Daniels and Jamie's mother, Lisa Daniels Goldman. They strive to end the stigma of substance use disorder and provide support to those struggling with the disease or who are in recovery. To learn more and support the Jamie Daniels Foundation, visit jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Again, thank you, Ken, for coming on the show.
It's good we had Ken on. beyond the obvious reasons of having Ken Daniels on here, but really getting in the weeds on the Jamie Daniels Foundation and everything that goes on behind it and the reasons. So now when we do these little readouts for the Jamie Daniels Foundation at the beginning of every episode, there is a lot more context behind it that hopefully now everybody understands. We're not just reading that out for the sake of reading that out. Like, no, we are supporting them for a reason. So,
yeah.
You know, the whole story behind it really does give a lot more to that one little readout we do every episode.
And as we hinted at during the interview, there's going to be a lot more to come regarding that partnership, which we're excited to get to later this summer. The most prevalent, some of the most prevalent feedback we got was centered around Evan. First, they were excited that Ken recognizes that Evan looked exactly like Shea Weber. And the second were people saying, we've never seen Evan so excited and entertained and tuned into an interview. And all we have to do is have an A+ premier all-star guest on to get you going, Evan.
Yes. Also, what time did we start that interview at? Like
6:30.
Yeah. So way earlier in the day and also way earlier in the week.
Hey, I'll pose this to you now, Evan. If you want to move your golf sessions, I'll start at 6:30 every time.
Well, Wednesday doesn't really work, and we all know why. Because I have to go be terrible on men's league and be the worst player on my team. But yeah.
Hey, you're gonna have to give me some tips this week because I'm getting out for a round for the first time this year on Saturday. So,
well, I don't know if I can help you because I can't help myself.
You're a lefty, so I'll just hit it the opposite way you do.
Okay.
Your slice will be the opposite of my slice, and thus balance will come to the world.
Let's jump into hockey here. To cover on this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast, we'll be doing a little bit of On This Day lined up for this episode. We'll be chatting about Detroit's second first-round pick and its final spot, and some little cap news for Detroit, a little tidbit of information that came up. We'll be recapping the recently completed playoff rounds before what's equivalent to the conference finals. Some updates regarding draft eligible players in this upcoming draft staying at the University of Michigan, most likely, before doubling up on our draft profiles as we missed one last episode. We want to make sure we get these out for you before the draft and jumping into overtime. All right. On this day in 2002, it's already been 19 years. The Detroit Red Wings, nearly 20 years ago, the Detroit Red Wings lifted the Stanley Cup with what I genuinely believe to be the greatest team ever assembled in the NHL. I know there's a lot of good teams that could contend with that. There's some Islanders teams, some Oilers teams that are up there for sure. I think probably a couple Habs teams as well. But man, 9 Hall of Famers, 10 once Pav is in, 11 if you count Scotty Bowman, not to mention Ken Holland and other builders. Like, it's that team. You'll never see it again because of the salary cap, probably for good reason.
Like, it's one thing with the 80s Oilers, they get the argument of we had the greatest player of all time. The Montreal Canadiens obviously had loads of great players, but that 2002 Red Wings could probably lay claim to the greatest goalie of all time, the second greatest at worst defenseman of all time, a top 10 forward player of all time, and then 7 other Hall of Famers. Like, it's comical.
Yeah, you had a mix of like prime players who are going to be Hall of Famers to like players who are legitimately at the tail end of their careers, but not like bums, like they were contributing. These players were still very effective players. You had Luc Robitaille as like the 4th line left wing at some point. Like, I'm sorry. Brendan Shanahan's my favorite player of all time. A lot of you will know that. I've loved him. I loved watching him as a kid. He will always be my all-time favorite Red Wing, all-time favorite player. And whenever you look into greatest left wingers of all time arguments, Shanahan's up there, but he's not, the best. You're going to look at players. I mean, Ovechkin now, Luc Robitaille's up there. And as a kid, I was like, oh man, like Luc Robitaille's always considered better. I think Shanny can pass him. What did I care? They were both on the same team in 2002. Like, what does it matter? The only
Shaney played higher in the lineup. That was your argument.
Yeah, for real. The only thing that could have made that team better is if Henrik Zetterberg started playing a year sooner, because he started his rookie season the next year. Well, Red Wings fans, man, it's days like that where you look back and you're like, oh yeah, we were spoiled.
Yeah, they didn't play that year, but then you factor in that at that point, Zetterberg and Kronwall were in the organization.
I always forget that Sean Avery was on that team.
Oh yeah, I'll never forget.
Didn't really play, but he was a thing.
It was against Colorado where Sean Avery started to stand up and chirp at Joe Sakic, and Brett Hull grabbed him by the back of his jersey, sat him down, and I can't remember what his exact words were, but he says, "You don't disrespect Mr. Sakic like that." Something to that effect.
It was, "You do not get to talk to Mr. Sakic."
That's what it was. Yeah. Those were early Sean Avery days. That was before he evolved into his final form, which I still don't think he's reached based on his online presence. He's
defending the bike lanes in New York City now. He's a real the hero of the people.
Okay, some more present news. Pick 23. 23rd overall, which is in effect the 22nd player to be picked. That is where Detroit's second first round pick is going to be based on who made the conference finals. Incredible scenario for Detroit. So we may have talked about this last episode, but yeah, Brad, like you mentioned, for naming purposes, it's the 23rd overall pick. But in terms of what players Detroit's picking, they get the 6th player and the 22nd player off the board.
The truly remarkable thing is, the 22nd pick is the highest it could have been. Like, it was only the West Division that did not end in a fashion that was favorable to that pick.
Yeah, because Colorado wasn't going to lose the first round, and
yeah, like, because Vegas and Colorado finished ahead, so it didn't make a difference between them who won. So we knew that series meant nothing in terms of the pick, and every other series went in the Red Wings' favor. Just crazy odds.
Man, Dimitri messaged me. It's like just toying around instead of making the pick, whether you can trade that pick for another like young, very capable player right now, and just seeing the things that Steve Yzerman can turn the Anthony Mantha trade into. Other GMs really shouldn't pick up the phone when he calls. They really, really shouldn't. Yeah.
What was our argument for when we had Ken Holland? To be a good GM in the NHL, all you have to do is call the bad GMs a lot. That doesn't really apply to Steve Yzerman, because the Capitals are not a poorly run team. So, it's not like he just called up and ripped off Jim Benning or, Pierre Dorian. Like, that was impressive.
And just moving on to some other little tidbits of news. Contracts coming off the books. I can't remember who tweeted it out. It was one of the TSN guys. But Stephen Weiss is not going to be paid out any longer of his $1.67 million a year for the buyout. This was his last season. So once the season ends, Stephen Weiss is no longer on the Red Wings books, we should say. 5 more seasons after this one of Justin Abdelkader's contract. Henrik Zetterberg's contract also comes off the books. So that frees up some LTIR space. And for what it's worth, I think, technically speaking, David Savard, because they retain a little bit on his contract there. So that doesn't actually make a difference, but just to talk about contracts that come off the books. But yeah, Weiss and Zetterberg. You lose Weiss, in the history, because I always think of Nielsen, I think of Abdelkader, I think of those contracts. You forget how long ago Weiss was actually bought out.
It's funny looking back at it, because I may not be remembering this exactly right, but it was in the minds of Red Wings fans at the time. We found out later it wasn't true, but it was they could have Filppula or they could have Weiss, but they couldn't afford both, so they had to pick and choose. And we ended up with Weiss, and when Weiss is coming off the books is the same time Filppula is coming off the books from an entirely different contract. Now, we found out later Filppula sounds like he wanted to leave, so it wasn't really a choice. But it's just hindsight being 2020. It's funny to think about.
Yeah, similar money, right? And they signed Weiss off the heels of 2013, which, I mean, Red Wings fans will remember as a pretty devastating playoff run because they lost to the Chicago team that ended up winning the cup even after being up 3-1 in the series. That was when Danny DeKeyser broke his thumb. Ah, man. Who was it that took that slap shot? That was Seabrook from the point to win the series or something to that effect. Yeah, that one hurt. So there was still a lot of high being ridden. And Babcock actually was the one who really pushed for Weiss. He was a big Weiss stan. So, that was a big draw into bringing in that free agent. Funny how.
Thanks, Babs.
Is that because Stephen Weiss is a good old Ontario boy?
He was, eh? He had that like coach's pedigree. Every coach wanted Stephen Weiss to play for him.
I think Babcock and Weiss are missing the same teeth, so they had that connection.
All right. Let's jump into some playoff talk here. There have been some series to wrap up, and I think we have to start with the obvious. The Montreal Canadiens have done it again. They have swept the Winnipeg Jets. I don't care how they look on paper. I don't care what kind of system they coach. Nobody can call these Montreal Canadiens bad. They have found a way to come together and be greater than the sum of their parts. They are playing, and at the risk of being very hockey man talking ahead, meaningless quips, they are playing playoff hockey right now. And it's paying dividends. They have won how many? 7 straight games, is it? Heading into this series against Vegas, I should say. Good for them.
Yeah, because they were down 3-1 to Toronto, and then won 3 straight, and then they swept Winnipeg. So there's 7.
Yep. Credit to Ducharme.
Honestly, like, it's crazy. I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, but Carey Price, we really, and I'm bad for this personally, we really need to stop talking about his decline because I think he's just bored in the regular season at this point.
He's LeBron. He coasts into the playoffs.
Yeah, he's like, oh, time to go? Sure, I got this. They play a really sound fundamental game from a Red Wings standpoint. For everybody who argues in favor of Jeff Blashill, this is your argument. I am literally telling you how to argue against me. Montreal has the exact same mindset. They don't generate a lot of offense. They don't really score. They don't have a lot of offensive talent. They play a very low event, boring, but effective defensive style. Now, they do push the pace more than the Red Wings do, but that's likely more to do with talent. So if you want to see a path to how the Red Wings could be successful, this is it. My return argument is this is not sustainable for Montreal, but this is your best argument right now. Now to take away from Montreal is they have had a lot of luck in these playoffs. They've won a lot of overtime games, which overtime games are always a coin flip. They beat they beat Toronto in the key games, and Toronto was missing Tavares and Muzzin. The Jets were missing their best player in Scheifele for 3/4 of that series, the last 3 games of that series. So Montreal has run into a lot of luck in these playoffs. There's no way around that. But every team that wins the Stanley Cup has a fair amount of luck to get there. So you can't really take all that much to them. The stars aligned for them to capitalize, and they have. Because the stars have aligned for other teams in the past, and they've still shitted away. Montreal hasn't done that. So, like, you still have to give them full credit for where they are. Again, I still think they're going to get absolutely walked by Vegas, but I thought they were going to get walked by Winnipeg and Toronto. So who the hell knows?
I am hardly being funny here when I say I'm fully expecting Islanders Canadiens. And I kind of want it, honestly. I wouldn't have said that before I saw Vegas's annoying ass tweet where they were like, hey, Preds, is this worth hanging a banner? And it's like, hey, buddy, the Preds have nothing to do with this. I'm all for dunking on the Preds for the banner thing, but they've been out. And not only that, they dunked on you back by did you see the banner they photoshopped? It was a Vegas banner that was going up and it said, this is why nobody likes you. And like, that's exactly right. Like, Vegas Twitter is so annoying. That's the only reason I would want that team to lose. But yeah, no, back to the Habs and the Jets. Good for them. You're right, Brad, on all those points as to why they won some of their games. They had to have bounces. They had to have luck. They had to have the other team beating themselves, as is Toronto's tradition. But hey, that's the playoffs. if these playoffs have taught me anything, it's throw all the expectations, throw all the this should happen or this is what it's like on paper out the window. That's for the first 82 games. I'm more concerned about what team can step it up and get that extra 1/10% of effort on the ice or skill or talent or capitalizing on a bounce to make it work. Get that edge however you can. So, yeah, man, credit. Yeah, it sucks to be the Edmonton Oilers because you got swept by a team that got swept, and that was by the Montreal Canadiens, so yikes.
And there's a chance Vegas sweeps Montreal, so we get the rare triple sweep, which has only happened twice in previous NHL history, but oddly enough, the last time it happened was 2019. Like, it wasn't that long ago when the Penguins got swept by the Islanders got swept by the Hurricanes got swept by the Bruins, and St. Louis had to ruin it in the Cup Finals and not sweep the Bruins to complete the quad. But twice in NHL history, but we're on the verge of maybe a third in 3 years.
So Canadians in 4 or 5?
I'll say 4, just to keep
6. We'll do it on home ice.
Carolina, Tampa Bay. I was hoping for more from that series. I was hoping for more from Carolina. I would have liked a longer series in 5 games, but really what it just cements is, holy shit, Andrei Vasilevsky's good and is worthy of the praise he gets. And Tampa Bay is still a killer team who is an odds-on Cup favorite, even though they lost game 1 against the Islanders today.
Don't say it, Brad. Don't say it. Anyways, well, it helps when you're 18 mil over the cap. Anyway,
we need a bell. Evan, we need that bell back.
I really tried. To be fair, it was only 5 games, but it was a very entertaining 5 games, and it was a very close 5 games. Carolina didn't get walked in that series. They weren't outclassed. They belonged. Tampa is the better team. And again, I've been saying it for years. Tampa is the Cup favorite every year until otherwise stated. So none of this is surprising. Carolina made it a fight, but Tampa is Tampa, so they made it through. The Islanders put on a clinic in how to beat the Lightning today and just like absolutely stifle them and capitalize on mistakes. They're not going to do that 4 games in a row, but they have the blueprint. Yeah, I mean, where is Tampa lacking? What more can you say? Their third pairing of Savard Sergachev is light years ahead of any pairing on the Red Wings. So they don't even belong in the same league. So
yeah,
this all makes sense.
If the Red Wings had a pairing of that caliber next season, we'd say, what GM did Steve Yzerman rip off to make that happen? Like, half of that would have to be Seider having an amazing, like, Calder level rookie season.
Watching playoff hockey has just solidified my opinion on how far away Detroit actually is. Because just going from watching Red Wings games to now watching playoffs and teams I typically wouldn't ever really watch, it honestly looks like it's a different league.
I was watching Colorado Vegas, and yeah, same thought. I was like, this is like, it's almost jolting. You remember that how fast the sport is and how good these players are. And not to say that the Red Wings don't have NHL caliber players, but it all goes away once you're muddied at the bottom of the league, right? Like it's all so disjointed, and you see the set plays they run and you're like, holy shit.
You see the type of plays their star players make every shift. It's just the level of competition in the Vegas Colorado series, and the skill that both those teams possess was just, it just makes me rethink everything I've thought about where Detroit is, and not in a good way.
Like, with all due respect to Dylan Larkin, you watch Mark Stone, Nathan McKinnon, Braden Point, Victor Hedman, Matt Barzal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It just cements the fact that you can't be a cup contender with Dylan Larkin as your best player. You can't. There's no path there. You have to have 12 of him or better players. Now, based on the draft and everything, it looks like we have several candidates to be better than Larkin, so it's not completely doom and gloom. But yeah, this team has a long way to go. Like, Carolina just lost in 5 games in the second round. Now think of how far ahead of Detroit they are.
Yeah.
So it's good perspective.
Not only do you need to be able to run 4 lines, basically, but you need to have a superstar, at least a superstar forward, at least a superstar in net, and probably a superstar on D.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Islanders, and that may, there are a couple guys who I think are all-stars. I don't know how I feel about their goaltending in terms of saying all-star, but Islanders are a little bit different than the other teams.
I will argue for the Islanders here because, us included, they've been branded with this boring systems team. And to an extent, that's true. But because they have that brand, I don't think we realize how good some of their players are. Adam Pelech is going to be on Norris ballots this year. And I don't think people realize that. Ryan Pulak's not that far behind. Matt Barzal is one of the best players in the league. Brock Nelson's numbers, if you go look them up, will surprise the hell out of you. Jordan Eberle, still good. Don't tell Edmonton. Like, they have players. They are not just Barry Trotzing their way through the playoffs. I'll still argue Trotz is the biggest reason they've made the conference finals in back-to-back years. But they are not
superstar.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly. But they are not just Barry Trotzing their way through the playoffs. And I think they get sold short on that.
I think if Matt Barzal played on a different team, he would be up for like Rocket Richard Hart votes every single year. I think the way he plays under a Barry Trotz team limits him offensively. And he's still one of the best players.
100%. Yeah, you put... To go with a team still in the playoffs, you put Matt Barzal on Vegas or even Colorado, he's a 90-point guy. Easy. Easy.
Yeah. Before I jump into the next series here, do you guys know of any face moisturizer for men's companies? Because that's who we should get to sponsor this podcast. Because look at Evan's face with that evening glow right now. It's always so funny when this time of day hits.
Yeah, I've got the blinds fully open now. So I'm partially blind from the sunset. But it was getting dark in here.
Partially blind by how beautiful this scene is. Whose face looks like this? At the end of a long day, you have Brad and I just pasty, we look like shit, haven't had a haircut in forever.
Well, the key is to sit on it
down from the heavens.
The key is to sit on a dock for approximately 16 hours for a single day.
That's what stress is like.
The thing is, I have kids in the middle of a lockdown. I have lived outside for the past 2 months. My farmer's tan is aggressive, but I still look like this. Evan, you're ignoring the severe portion of this that is genetics that we lack.
I should also add the caveat that I had no responsibilities as well.
Yeah, I was going to say.
That's very key to this 12 hours in the sun.
Brad's farmer tan's so bad that he actually received corn subsidies from the government. Anyhow, moving on. So
hold on. Are we just gonna skim past Ryan having the worst dad joke of the week?
Since when is that surprising? You're the biggest dad. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of the Islanders, they put away the Bruins in 6, and honestly, that to me is the biggest testament to the quality of play of that team that you both were just talking about. The Bruins are a good team, man. I think they beat themselves a little bit. I have no idea why they're putting Tuukka Rask in net if the guy needs surgery. Look, I'm big on Tuukka Rask. I think he's one of the most talented goalies in the world, and if he's healthy, you play him. But if he needs surgery, play your very capable young goaltender. Play him. Spencer Knight won a game in these playoffs. Swayman, right, is his name?
That's the thing. What did Rask have? A torn labrum in his hip?
Yeah.
My God, he's a goalie. You need your hips, but it's not just that they have Swayman. And don't get me wrong, Swayman's been very good. They also have Halak and Vladar, who were also really, really good. They had 3 viable options, although I think Halak might be injured, but I'm not 1,000%. Either way, yeah, you had options and good ones. Don't leave the poor guy to suffer.
Yeah.
Swayman was pretty lights out down the stretch of the last bit of the regular season, too. So it was a couple strange decisions made by Boston that kind of sealed their fate. And they ran up against the Islanders, who just seemed to put everybody in a sleeper hold.
If there's any team that we're happy to see shoot themselves in the foot, it's Boston. So... fantastic.
Agreed.
Honestly, I think 3 of these series had a trend of a team beating themselves. 3 of the 4. Winnipeg, Mark Scheifele makes a stupid hit, gets himself suspended for the series. They don't stand a chance any of those games. And then Colorado loses 4-2, and we're going to talk about that series right now. Look, that's a great series. I only wish that series could have gone 9 games, like some of the best hockey you'll watch. If that was a Cup Finals, no one would have been mad. Would Colorado have at least brought it to 7 with Nazem Kadri in? I'd say yeah, absolutely. And here you have Kadri suspended for the entirety of the series. I just don't understand. I get sometimes you make a hit or you make a play that gets lost in the moment or you lose your head or whatever, but like these are bona fide examples, like Bruce Cassidy keeping Tuukka Rask, Nazem Kadri making that hit, getting himself suspended, Mark Scheifele making that hit, getting himself suspended. These weren't borderline things. These were like stupid plays that hurt the team. And this is what happens. In a playoffs like this, I don't understand how you make those decisions. But yeah, Colorado Vegas, what a series. I had Colorado winning it all. That was my bracket. I'll be transparent with that. I'm not shocked to see Vegas win. Like, I think these are arguably the 2 best teams in the playoffs, unless you want to count Tampa Bay, right? So I really just wish we could have had more of that hockey.
Honestly, the hockey in that series was so good, it forced me to make a meme on my phone from bed watching it, just because, like, you watch Montreal Winnipeg and then you watch that, you can't convince me that was the same sport, let alone the same league. It's unbelievable. Like, I understand defense wins championships. Colorado and Vegas said screw that. Like, up tempo, high offense, high octane, just run and gun, and they do it so well. Like, obviously, Montreal winning the Cup would be a really fun story. Don't get me wrong. But for the good of hockey, we need Vegas to win because we need every team to emulate this. This is what we want hockey to be. So let's, like, whatever team wins the Cup, teams will copy. So if you like fun in games, Tampa winning last year was a good start. If Vegas does it this year, that there's a good chance that will be the new trend in the NHL because it's proved like multiple successes with the same style.
The thing that gets me with Vegas, I understand why people don't want Vegas to win, and I don't even think it's bad reasoning. They're new; they haven't had the trials and tribulations that other franchises have had for years. I get that. I don't necessarily like subscribe to that, but I understand it completely. There's a lot of conversation about why Vegas is so good, and the expansion draft rules being geared towards expansion teams being good. Yeah, that's a factor, sure. Other GMs making bad trades during the expansion draft or bad moves. Yeah, that's part of it. Whatever. This is from Graphic Comments, the Twitter account, great account to follow. The biggest portion of it, and they had a fun comic about this. I retweeted it. Sorry. It's the $75 million in cap space free. And this is a quote from the comic, free of dead money from years of hockey man decisions. And that is the reality of it. You do not have a lifetime of Chiarelli decisions. You don't have a lifetime of the, later year Ken Holland decisions. You don't have a lifetime of just bad contracts built up. They had every year they go out and buy another fantastic player. Look how easily they were able to sign Mark Stone after trading for him. Look how easily they were able to bring in Pietrangelo. Like, they're able to capitalize on not only the talent they have, but bring in new talent to a very desirable city to live and play in because they don't have the weight of all those bad contracts. So honestly, it makes complete sense that they contend year in and year out.
So to tackle every point you made there quickly, one about people are unsure if Vegas even deserves this. Piss off. Quit your gatekeeping bullshit. You like hockey. That's why you watch hockey. So a new market succeeding is really helping grow the sport. So if you're pro hockey, you should be pro grow the game. You should be happy a new market is experiencing a lot of success. So any other opinion is just weird. It's like you want hockey to shrink. 2, on the whole, they haven't had the suffering part. I think 1 5-minute power play met their quota for that. Yeah. They may not have the duration, but the heartbreak adds up. And your last point about, what having a blank canvas can do. Yeah, 1,000%. Look at what Yzerman's done ever since the Red Wings got out of cap hell. And he hasn't even done anything aggressive yet. He turned the Marks, some of the cap space into a Mark Stahl, which was a second-round pick, signed Mantha to a good contract, and then acquired a Jacob Vrana second-round pick and a first-round pick. Like, a blank canvas goes a really, really long way in hockey, and I'm not convinced Seattle is going to be this good because in regards to the expansion draft setting them up for success, I still don't buy that despite how good Vegas is. Because when you look at who all their top players are that they acquired via the expansion draft, it was all other teams' mistakes. Shea Theodore was a trade to acquire another player. Alex Tuch was a trade to acquire another player. Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault was a package deal to free up cap space for Florida. Like, these are their best players outside of Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty, who were trades after the fact. Like, if every team had any common sense, Vegas got the 11th best player on everybody's team, but teams trip over themselves to help them. So I think Seattle's going to have some deals like that, but they're not getting this level of help that Vegas had.
Maybe not intentionally, but I don't know, man. I think a lot of people are going to have... Seattle can squeeze them based on the money, right? Like, they really can help them out.
Well, getting back to your third point originally, yes, hockey men are going to help Seattle. It won't be as much as Vegas, but it's going to happen. It just won't be as dramatic.
Speaking of Alex Tuch, another player who looks like Evan. Evan just looks like a quintessential hockey player.
Yeah, I see that one more than the Shea Weber, but, you know, for the sake of the joke, I'll continue with it.
Ken said it. That means it's a rule now.
It's true.
Okay, previewing these conference finals or third round or semifinals or whatever we want to call them. Lightning Islanders. Game 1 just happened. The Islanders hung on for a 2-1 victory. That's going to be a good series. I really think that, you know, I think it's easy to pick the Lightning for sure, even let's say before this game. I don't know. I think the Islanders have a real chance. Out of all of their years, I really think this is the one where they have the best chance. And if they get past Tampa Bay, how do you not pick them to win it all?
Because Vegas. So I'm very pro Islanders in this series. I think as Red Wings fans, we have to be. I don't think we have a choice. Today was a good start. It was a good blueprint. Tampa's Tampa. They have way more skill than the Lightning, and John Cooper is a good coach, so they will adapt. And Vasilevsky is a good goalie, and he's not going to be happy with either of the goals he let in today. I still think Tampa wins this series, probably in 7, just because they're Tampa, but I am very much on the Islanders bandwagon.
Who do I have? I have Vegas in the finals against Boston, so that doesn't really work out anymore, does it? I just have a hard. It's so hard to bet against either of those teams. On the one hand, you've got Tampa, which is basically the Red Sox in disguise at this point. On the other hand, you've got Barry Trotz, who, when they play at home, they can just line up match everybody and win those games. Like, I have a really tough time betting against either of the teams, but man, what the Islanders are doing right now is pretty remarkable. So I'll go with the Islanders, also because I dislike Tampa.
I'm going to be boring here, and I am going to take Tampa in the end. But I think and hope I'm wrong, and I think the Islanders have a really great chance to prove me wrong here and upset Tampa. I think the series is going. I don't think it's finishing in less than 6, most likely 7, but who knows how that goes. Jumping over to the other side of this, if Montreal takes a single game off Vegas, that's a victory in my mind. I mean, literally it is, but like that is a series victory in my mind. If Montreal takes multiple games off Vegas, oh, man. I want to see it happen. You know, it's fun as a Red Wings fan to root against Montreal, same division. You know, we beat them 4 times in our worst season, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, like all that's great and well and good. But it's at the point now where it's hysterical. And to see a powerhouse like Vegas fall to Montreal would be absolutely so funny and break everyone's preconceived notions about what the North Division is like and what the Montreal Canadiens are like. And I love the chaos of it all. So I really do hope they make this at least a difficult series. My prediction is Vegas in 5. I think Montreal might be able to squeeze a win out, but I really hope it's like Montreal in 7 or something ridiculous like that.
So in this series, the goaltending is basically a wash because Fleury and Price have both been playing out of their minds. Vegas has a pretty comfortable advantage on defense, and that doesn't even factor in how injured Jeff Petrie is. I know he's wearing a special glove, so who knows how effective he'll be. But either way, even if Petrie's fully healthy, I still like Vegas's defense better. Vegas's offense is light years ahead of Montreal's. Like, they're not even in the same stratosphere. I give the coaching advantage to Vegas because, you know, DeBoer is a fantastic coach, and I don't think he's ever lost a game 7. It's been in the Final Four, 4 of the last 6 years with multiple teams. Basically, Vegas has every advantage in this series, literally every advantage. But I'm not getting suckered again, so Montreal in 7.
Yes, they actually gave Jeff Petrie that glove from what's that Marvel movie, The Endgame? I haven't seen it. I apologize.
God. Jesus. We are getting the full Evan experience this episode.
I do not like Marvel movies that much, or superhero movies for that matter, so I am not good with that reference, but I thought I would give it a shot and see how close I was. Was I
Infinity
close?
Gauntlet, buddy.
That's what it is? Mm.
How close you were wasn't the issue. I don't know. I think for me, who makes the dad jokes, and for Brad, who's literally the dad, I think you're the dad of this podcast right now.
I'm feeling like the dad. That movie that those young kids watch that I don't understand.
You Iron Men's.
Yes. I don't even remember what I said now, but I know it wasn't right.
They gave Jeff Petrie the Infinity Gauntlet, is what you were alluding to.
Yes. As I was trying to say, they gave him the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah, I don't think Montreal's got much of a chance, but I think I said that for the first 2 series as well. So, yeah, it'll be Montreal in like 5, probably. And if not, it'll be Vegas in 5. Somebody's going to win in 5. That's what my prediction is.
All right. Well, we'll watch these series progress. At least it's been fun. The only thing that you can really rip on teams for is when those single players or like one single coaching decision makes a mistake that costs it for them. So yeah, Scheifele, stupid hit, cost him. Kadri, stupid hit, cost him. Bruce Cassidy kept Tuukka Raskin, probably shouldn't have, it cost him. So, one other quick piece of news here. Owen Power, mentioned that he is likely looking to go back to the University of Michigan next year. This read like big news to a lot of people, you know, likely, or one of the most likely candidates to be selected first overall by the Buffalo Sabres. It makes sense though, right? Like, without spending too much time on this, it's a pretty easy decision. There's no need to rush Owen Power to the NHL. The Buffalo Sabres are hardly the framework for the world's greatest NHL team that needs that rookie help right now. Go back to Michigan, develop some more, come in when you're ready.
Well, we've said before, well, at least I've said before, I don't think there's anybody in this draft who's fully NHL ready. There's a few guys who could make a run for it, but a lot would have to go right for them. So the fact Power's talking about going back to Michigan next year, well, yeah, he's either playing with the Sabres or going to Michigan. It's not going to be anything else at this stage in his development anyway. It's my favorite thing. So I did the dumbest thing ever, but it worked out in my favor for entertainment purposes. I actually read some comments below one of these articles, and there were people posting, oh, good, Power's going to re-enter the draft so he doesn't have to get picked by Buffalo. And it's just like, that's not how this works, Jimbo. But the amount of people saying that was entertaining. But yeah, I mean, I'm a Michigan fan, so I'm hoping this comes to fruition.
Yeah, good for us. All right. Prospect profiles. We missed one last episode, so we're going to double up this episode for the last 15 minutes or so before before overtime. And we're going to start with one that is extremely relevant to Detroit at 6 overall. From Frölunda's J18 team. Shoots left, plays defense. Obviously very attractive to the Red Wings for that reason. Swedish player Simon Edvinsson. Brad, take us away here.
Simon Edvinsson, possibly the most polarizing prospect in this draft. Seen him as high as number 2 on some lists, including Bob McKenzie's list, which is the most relevant. Seen him as low as 21. So, what is Simon Edvinsson? He is massive, has skill, and can skate. So when you hear that about a left-handed defenseman, it seems like a no-brainer. But there are a lot of buts with his game. Not the greatest decision maker. Plays a risky style. Did not have the production you would hope to see from an offensive defenseman this past season. And plays at a pretty slow pace. Now, when you're a 6'4" defenseman with skill, you can play with slow pace. It's like Victor Hedman. I know Owen Power gets a lot of the Victor Hedman comparisons in this draft because he's big, rangy, and is going to go near the top of the draft. But stylistically, I think Edvinsson's the better comparison there. He's just not as good as either of those two. Or I should say as good as Hedman was at the same age. Edvinsson's a very boom or bust prospect. And I mean that in almost the most literal sense because there's a reality here where he doesn't become a relevant NHL player because there are that many questions about his pace and decision making. If you have all the tools in the world, but you are constantly making the wrong decision, you're not going to be that productive. I mean, Brendan Smith made an NHL career, but he was a first-round pick who sure as hell didn't have a career of a first-round pick for those exact reasons. Although Edvinsson's ceiling is much higher than Brendan Smith's ever was, just for comparison's sake. This is a guy you have to really trust your scouts to take. If they go, yeah, we see what everybody's talking about, but it's not as big an issue or it's easily correctable, do it, take him. When you combine the question marks with his lack of production, that's what sends up my red flags. Because, you know, for a 17-year-old defenseman playing in a men's professional hockey league, making some mistakes, that doesn't bother me usually. And the types of mistakes he generally makes aren't super egregious. It's not like he's giving away in the slot on the regular. So I'm not crazy concerned about that. I have more concerns with his lack of production and pace because he plays slow despite all his skill and despite how good his skating is, which is what's frustrating for me. He can play a lot faster than he does. Yeah, I don't know. I released my rankings for our patrons. I have him at number 8 still just because the tools are there, but I don't love him as much as most people do going into this draft.
Yeah, Edvinsson's a peculiar case, and like I mentioned before, he's going to be particularly attractive to the Red Wings and Red Wings fans because of the position he plays. You couple that with the fact that he's largely labeled as a two-way defender, right? So that's going to be... People are going to try to check off as many boxes as they can. You know, the Red Wings are bringing in Moritz Seider on the right side, a guy who can defend as well as pretty much anyone not in the NHL, and probably better than a lot of people currently in the NHL, and has some offensive aspect to this game. Edvinsson seems to have both sides of the ice covered. I'm confused as to the pace question for him because, like you mentioned, Brad, he does have the speed. So is this a hockey IQ thing? Does he need that time to read and survey the ice and make the decision? Because if so, I'm not genuinely a big fan of taking him at 6. That doesn't make him a bust prospect, and that doesn't make him a bad prospect. But I think there are better prospects overall who have better hockey IQ and make, you know, bigger impact on the game. If this is a guy who can't think the game fast enough, but who's supposed to have the puck on his stick to move up the ice, you're looking at a second, third pairing guy. And I'd rather take a swing at someone who's going to be first line, first pairing, starting goalie, with that 6th overall pick. But all those things you mentioned, like he can defend well. He can display some level of skill offensively. I think he is an all around. There is something to be said about every single aspect of his game. But yeah, the decision making to me and how he kind of reacts to the play and read the play before making that move. I'm not sold that he should be moved down. But there are a lot of questions for me. If the scouts are banging their fists on the table, this guy has enough in his toolkit where I'm saying, yeah, fine, he fits, he has the skill set. They're going to have to work like hell to make sure he's refined in his development, but I'm not mad at all. But I don't want to say polarizing for me. I wouldn't be angry if they took him, but I'm really, really focusing on what comes next for him.
Yeah, I think the first thing that really jumped out to me was we were talking about lack of production, and his shot is pretty unremarkable. For a guy that large, you think he would just be able to pound the puck. His slap shot doesn't look all that great to me. And his wrist shot doesn't look that great to me either. So if he can improve those, I think the offense would come, because he looks like he can get in good spots in the offensive zone, and elude defenders decently well right now. So I can see all that upside. But I just don't know if it's worth the risk with your top 10 pick when there's going to be a lot. I don't know if I should say safer or more sure picks, but I think there's going to be one or two guys available at Detroit's pick that I like more than Edvinsson. So I don't know, if the offensive game never comes, you basically just got yourself like a 3 to 6 defenseman. Those generally you can acquire in various ways in the NHL. So I like his game, but there's a lot of stuff I don't like about it. He is a good skater. I can't believe how good he skates for a guy who's 6'4", and how sort of deceptive he is on his feet. But yeah, it's kind of the all tools, no toolbox, or is that the one? Is that the saying? Good.
That is apt here.
I can't go 0 for 2 today. He kind of strikes me as that kind of guy. I don't know. He's not wowing me. You don't have to wow, but I just feel like you can get a guy like him who's already seasoned in the NHL when the time is ready to make a push to win a cup. I don't know. He's not a prospect that really stands out to me. Maybe I'm being too critical, but you do need guys like him on your team. You need guys who can, if he doesn't have offense, play a strong defensive game. I don't know. It just doesn't really tickle my fancy.
So there's a few things to note specifically with the draft here with Edvinsson. Now, obviously, we tend to trust Bob McKenzie's list the most because he's actually going off NHL scouts and what they're saying. And he's number 2 on McKenzie's list. So it's more likely than not Edvinsson won't even make it to the Red Wings pick, which again, where I have him ranked is just fine with me. It means someone higher on my board is making it to the Red Wings. But the other side of that coin is, I mentioned earlier that if you're picking him, you have to really have faith in your scouts and your development staff. And when it comes to European scouting teams, there's no European scouts I trust more in the NHL than the Detroit Red Wings. So if we pick him, I'm going to be comfortable with that pick because I trust Håkan Andersson probably more than any other human in the entire NHL. So I'm not going to freak out if we take him, even though he's not my favorite guy right now. Because if he says, yeah, this is a guy that is raw now, but we can turn him into a star, I'm on board. I am fully on board. A lot of the things, if you want to know kind of the talking points in more depth, to me, Edvinsson is a souped up William Wallander. So if you like the Wallander pick last year early in the second round, Edvinsson's a bigger upside bet, but with a lot of the same concerns. He's a project. The tools are there. The decision making's got to come around. Hasn't really produced to the level you'd want at the higher levels. All the things we said about Wallander last year, we're saying about Edvinsson now. It's just the ceiling is much higher. So, for context, if you want to get a little more in depth, we can just recycle the Wallander conversation.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the Edvinsson point here before getting to our next prospect, we hyper focused on his flaws and the cons column because, like Brad alluded to here, this guy is a top 10 pick. He's one of the best players in this draft by all rights. And the Red Wings are picking 6th overall. It's that sweet spot where you do have to weigh those flaws on balance. Don't take this as Edvinsson's a bad player, and if the Red Wings pick him, it's a bad pick. No. guy, skates phenomenally. The guy has a ton of skill. If the hockey IQ thing comes around and it's just that he needed some time to adjust to higher levels, and if his defending wasn't based on his physical dominance and he can translate that and keep improving that as he moves into better levels of hockey, yeah, that's an ultimate boom pick. That's a first pairing left side defenseman. My questions now are on how likely that is, but yeah, not everyone thinks this way. The scouts that Bob McKenzie talked to, who have a really good pulse on the way the drafts actually go, they see something that doesn't, or they see enough that those cons we talked about don't concern them too much. So he'll be a very interesting one, and I think he'll be one that we revisit before the draft. Okay. Our next prospect here, to cover on our prospect profiles, someone who I think got a lot of attention for good reason at the, U18s, Brennan Othmann, left winger, I think is a super interesting player, especially for Red Wings fans who are looking at who to take with that second first round pick that they got from Washington. Left winger from the Flint Firebirds. Brad, you start.
He's a super interesting player just because his mold of a hockey player, there's not many players like him. Ironically enough, there's another one in this first round in Mason McTavish, except he's a center. Othmann's a winger. But coming out of the GTHL, Othmann was the second overall pick in the OHL behind Shane Wright. Like, he put up cartoonish numbers going into the OHL draft and had a very respectable rookie season, U17 season in the OHL. Looking at it here, 17 goals, 33 points in 55 games at 16. That's worth noting. Had, because there was no OHL season, spent a good amount of time in the Swiss second league, I believe, this year. Was about a half a point per game player there, which is, again, impressive as a 17-year-old against men. Had a fantastic U18 for Team Canada. Now, the track record is there for Othmann, even though the OHL season got canceled. So when we talk about like the context that adds, he's one of the players where that's not a huge concern for me. He's a poor skater. Let's just get that out of the way. He's not a good skater. He's a below average skater. He is a pain in the ass, high compete level, and an unreal shot. So everything we said about why we like Mason McTavish, this is why we like Brendan Othmann. Not to the same level that McTavish is, but not far off. And obviously with the caveat, he's a winger, not a center. I see a lot of Tyler Bertuzzi and Brendan Othmann with a better shot. Like that's the vibe I get. And again, it's not an exact one-to-one comparison, but if you want to know the type, that's kind of what I see. And I think Othmann has Bertuzzi level upside. A guy who could play on a first line as a complementary player will be his goals stat line will generally be higher than his assist stat line, but you put him with a couple players, he can get to the dirty areas and finish. He can beat goalies from range with his shot. He can score in a lot of different ways. His only real big concern is his skating. His playmaking's fine, not a calling card, but good enough. But a guy who busts his ass off, has good puck skills, and his shot, there's a role for him on most NHL teams.
Yeah, the energy guy is right. If you add skating to him, I think he's moving well into the top 15 of most people's boards because, like you mentioned, I think that shot is fantastic. We saw that on display in the U18s. How intense he pushes into the offensive zone. Like if you actually couple that with a vastly improved skating skill set, which I mean, it's a big ask. If he was a different player, he'd be different. But there's a lot there to like about his game. He does fit the Steve Yzerman mold of, go 110 at all times. This is a guy who's going to work his ass off, compete super well, has offensive prowess, can play with talented offensive players as was displayed. The skating does concern me. He fits into the mold of, I think it's fixable, but if every player whose skating was fixable fixed their skating, there'd be a lot better players in the NHL, right? Like there's just some guys who can't. So it's an if for me. If the U18s didn't happen and this was a normal year, I think Brendan Othmann would have been a great target for the second round. But because he got that extra showcase, because people saw him at the U18s with Canada, I think there's not a chance he slips to the second round. If he's who Detroit takes with their 23rd pick or 23rd overall pick, I'm not upset at all. I'm not upset at all. My ideal range would be something a little bit later than that. I think if they snagged him with their second round pick, that'd be a lot better, but you can't ask for everything. So I don't think he makes it out of the first. But yeah, Brennan Othmann, I think, deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, his skating from the U18s that I remember was not that great, but he scored goals sort of in every sort of manner, which is something you really like to see. So I think his NHL certainty is rather quite high, and there'll be a lot of coaches who like his game and what he can bring. So, if he works on his skating, he'll be better defensively. He'll be better offensively as well, and he'll find himself higher in the lineup. If he doesn't, he's decent defensively, and he's got a good work ethic and can chip in somewhat offensively as well. So he could find himself in the bottom 6 as a supplementary scorer. So if you're looking for a safe pick, I think he's pretty safe at 23 if he's still there. I like him. He's just got to work on his foot speed, really.
Now, when I posted my rankings on Patreon, I broke them into tiers, and Othmann fell in my 3rd tier, which I forget what I called that. I labeled that the please fall to 23 overall for the Red Wings. He was on the lower end of that tier, but still in that tier. So just linking it up here. Yeah, I have him ranked 18. So if the Red Wings get him at 23, I'm thrilled.
Well, that's 2 prospect profiles for you today. And in a Winged Wheel podcast first, Evan did not once say, well, what else is there to say? So that Ken Daniels interview really changed you, Evan?
Well, there was stuff left to say, so today I didn't need to.
What he's saying is Brad and I didn't do our jobs well enough, so it's an indictment onto us. No, those are 2 prospect profiles to get through. And like I've mentioned before, we're going to be revisiting these profiles. This has been a funny year to scout. I mean, we talked about Brennan Othmann and his goal scoring prowess in the U18s. I think it was 3 goals in 7 games. We don't have big sample sizes on a lot of these players. So, as we have more time to pour over the information, and as we have a little bit of a better pulse about what scouts around the league are thinking as well, and as we just continue to beat conversations to death, see Jesper Wallstedt, we'll be jumping back into these. So if you feel like we could or should revisit these, drop us a comment or tweet at us or whatever it might be, and we'll do that. But for now, let's jump into overtime. We're going to start getting into the last phase of this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. Overtime is going to start with our Winged Wheel podcast patrons. Patrons like you, you're the reason why we can do cool things like interview Ken Daniels and have him on the show and show the amazing support that we have for organizations like the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So thank your local Winged Wheel podcast patron, and if you are able, please consider supporting the show. Ruthless and Toothless says, can you verbally differentiate between a star and a superstar? Moreover, once a superstar, always a superstar? Does that status degrade with age? Great work on the interview. What was Evan on? Joking. Cheers. Let me do this first. I have superstar as a very, very small window. I have superstar as we had the Mark Scheifele conversation once. I think Mark Scheifele is on the high end star. I think superstar is game breaking. I think superstar is you're pushing 100 points. You drag your teams to wins. The highest of high end. Star is a much more bigger window than superstar. I think superstar is a much more sparing label in my mind.
For easy context, for me, superstar is nominated for major awards yearly for a prolonged period of time, or if you're still young, you are absolutely dominating the league. Connor McDavid's young, but we knew very early on he was a superstar because he was, putting up 100 points as a 12-year-old. It was insane. If you have to have the argument about whether or not they are a superstar, they're not. That's kind of what it comes down to me. True superstar. The definition of star can be a little broader. But again, that's a pretty reserved list too, because I don't even have Larkin as an NHL star. He's a really, really good player. But a star is a guy who makes all-star teams routinely. Again, will every now and then get nominated for awards, top 30 scoring, or yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean? But superstar, there should be no debate. You should look at the player and go, yeah, he's one. I don't have to justify this.
Brad Marchand, superstar. David Krejci, like maybe when he was a bit younger, star. Fair?
I wouldn't even have Krejci in a star category.
Oh, I think that's Krejci erasure, but that's an argument for a different day.
I remember how good Krejci was. He wasn't winning awards, man. He wasn't even nominated.
Brendan, yeah, because awards are a great litmus test. No, we actually don't even have time for this fight today. This comment's from Brendan, and I'm not saying this anymore. Ryan, say hashtag. It's the stupid crypto coins with stupid names. Got my second dose and the first day slept 16 or 20 hours. I can't wait for the draft. It's going to be fun to see who we get. Well, congrats. I'm happy you're through. I heard the second dose hits you a little harder, so happy you're through that, and congrats again. Antonio Gracia says, just ordered my brother a Rain City Bitch Pigeons jersey for his birthday. He likes hockey well enough, but I wouldn't call him a major fan. He's more of a gamer / appreciator of fine memes. That said, my question to you is, if you could turn a meme into a jersey for a non-hockey fan, which would you choose? Oh, it would be Ben Affleck smoking a cigarette outside that building looking exhausted. That's the Red Wings jersey.
The two women from the Housewives show yelling at the cat at the dinner table.
I can't even think of a meme that could be made into a jersey right now. My brain is so mush.
I also want to be specific. The two women yelling at the cat at the table, the two women are absolutely me and Ryan yelling at Evan.
1,000%. Yeah.
I can get on board with that.
Evan Beckner says, while I mostly agree with Brad's opinion on taking Wallstedt, it's hard to ignore that 3 of the top 4 highest paid goalies are in the conference finals, and before Brad mentions Tampa's cap circumvention.
For context, just remember, you could take Kucherov and Hedman off that team right now, and they're still over the cap.
Evan, did you hear something? Not me. Taylor Tadgell says, the Ken Daniels episode was one of my favorites to listen to ever. Potential UFA targets this offseason. The talk is about the draft and prospects a lot, but there needs to be guys competing for spots and filling out the roster that aren't from the organization. Honestly, my thought is fill out as many of those with young guys as you can and get more Bobby Ryan types, like guys who aren't bums, but who aren't going to push you too far over. It's not a popular thing to say out loud, but I want this team well in the lottery mix for Shane Wright. That's where I want them.
We can sign Alexander Ovechkin.
Yeah, it'll only cost $11 million a year.
Tuukka Rask too. He'll heal up fine. No, I'm going to bang the table for the Alex Galchenyuks of the world. Find guys who have a little bit of offensive upside. Have Blashill teach them the defenseman. They'll cost $1 million, and it's all I want. I don't want in on the Dougie Hamiltons this year. I don't want in on the Alex Ovechkins this year. More Troy Stetchers, please.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Please, Troy Stetchers. Colorado 14ers, who I believe is a recently upgraded to name level sponsor. So Colorado 14ers, thank you so much. They say, thanks so much for the Ken Daniels interview. As someone with 14 years of sobriety, there are a few days when I do not have to convince myself that jail, hospitals, or death are my options should I ever come down with a case of the effets and make it the choice to have a drink. I've never in my life consumed alcohol without getting drunk, but my brain on its own still believes that it's possible. Those who are not addicts or alcoholics will never truly understand what it's like to be one, but Ken is absolutely right when he says that talking about the disease and raising awareness is what's needed to ease certain stigmas associated with it. Great job with all you've done and continue to do in supporting the Jamie Daniels Foundation. It has saved lives, and listening to Ken tell his story last Wednesday assisted in the saving of my own. I can't tell you how much that means to us. Thank you so much for sharing that comment. We're just so grateful that we have people like you to share your story and Ken to share the story of Jamie and the work they're doing. So, yeah, I feel just as at a loss for words as I did when Ken was talking. So thank you. Josh Brink says, what is your favorite non-Red Wings hockey documentary? I think I watched the Russian 5 doc for the 40th time, and I haven't really branched out of the Wings realm. I'm trying to prepare for off-season content drought. Does Goon count?
Okay, so this one's really old, and I don't even know where it's available, but I remember, I think it was CBC, and I have the DVD box set downstairs still. I think it was called Hockey, A People's History, and it was like the full origins of the game of hockey all the way up to present day when it was made. And it was fascinating because it went into like the early days of where hockey was invented, how it started, the early days of women's hockey. Like our local area, KW Cambridge, was one of like the hubs for the first like prominent women's hockey teams starting. Like it was just super fascinating because they really got into the weeds on it and didn't focus too much on the modern, which I'm always a fan of.
Was this a question about hockey documentaries or just documentaries?
Hockey documentaries that aren't Red Wings.
I have no idea. Okay. Have I even watched one? No, I don't think I have.
Kyle Hashman says, great interview. Just picturing Mickey Redmond in his underwear. Smelling of garlic fanning the detector is hilarious. As we all know of Tampa's cap circumventions and the verbal outcry recently, do we ever see changes to only ice a compliant team while being over as a team in the playoffs, or any changes? Also, who do you think Tampa loses this year? Similar to how Johnson was the big block last year until the injury.
I mean, we have to see change. Like, there's a lot of things I critique the NHL for, but I understand where they're coming from. This is the one that just seems insane to me. You have to be cap compliant in the regular season, but in the most important hockey of the year, fuck it. Teams can do whatever they want. Like, it makes no sense to me. Yeah, you should have to be cap compliant in the playoffs too. It just makes sense. But I digress on that. I can't. So stupid.
Cody Stark says, to put it in a different perspective, we were celebrating my old man's 70th birthday party this June. He was 16 and working at a Piggly Wiggly grocery store the last time the Maple Leafs won the cup. Wow, that is the best frame of mind to think, or like the frame of reference, for a Leafs cup. So thank you for that. Also, waiting on my Windwheel
Another
podcast.
fun stat on that. Sorry, just to cut off. Because the Leafs didn't win the cup this year, I don't remember the exact date, but the Leafs are going to set the record for longest Stanley Cup drought in the history of hockey.
Yep. They beat the Rangers. Yeah. Also still patiently on winning my Windwheel Podcast Fantasy Hockey League prize. Oh, have you not picked it? Because you have options. DM me, Cody. We'll make sure we get that picked. Also, your baby onesie is still on the way. The color we had for you was out of stock, but it's coming. Beer League Participation Trophy says, as a gamer, sometimes I come to this podcast and I do a lot of thinking about what I might say, but this time, fuck it. Let's just put some words out there and see what happens. Thanks to you frickin' Canadians, I finally broke and had to know what all this poutine stuff was about. Slightly hungover, didn't feel like putting in too much effort using frozen fries and gravy packets, but I did find and use cheese curds if that compensates for my sins. Overall, it was fine. Great interview with Ken, and it's always a nice change of pace to have an actual professional on the show. I mean, big words from someone who's using gravy packets and frozen fries, but I digress. No, I mean, it's not for everyone, I guess, but at least he used real cheese curds. Peter Chott says, with Vegas back in the Final Four, would you say that this cements Peter DeBoer as the best coach currently working in the NHL to not have a cup, or even taking into account the notable currently unemployed coaches like Gallant and Boudreau? 2 trips to the finals with the underdog Devils and Sharks teams, 3 more conference final trips, 6-0 record in Game 7s are all very impressive lines on his resume. 6-0 in Game 7s, that's nuts.
DeBoer is a fantastic coach. Again, it's not even the NHL. Like, he coached the Kitchener Rangers, like our local OHL team, for a bunch of years way back when, and won a Memorial Cup there. He was the last coach of the last Rangers team to win a Mem Cup. So yeah, like, it has to be him. I don't even know who else it could be.
Ghost of Podcast Pass says, question for Ryan and Evan. Would you take $1 million, but your face would look like Brad's? I mean, I would. I don't think the differential between Brad and I is not too much. I don't know if Evan's taking that $1 million. That's a big hit. Evan, it would be better if you weren't muted, buddy.
It's my first day on the podcast as a 31-year-old. I would take the $1 million solely because then I can start on house number 2 and I can, start my pain all over again.
No, Evan sees that $1 million and just writes it over to the person that sells him his cottage.
Pretty much, yeah. It would be in my possession for about 3 days, so long as the banks are already open.
Yeah, then he'd kill me for my $1 million, and then he'd be halfway to spending what he actually plans on spending on his cottage one day.
I hadn't thought about that as an option, but I'll keep that in the back of my mind.
Shit. Justin and the Angry Mob says, Guten Tag, fellas. First off, great interview with Ken Daniels. I laughed, I cried, and I learned a lot. And oh my goodness, yes, Evan is Shea Weber's doppelganger. Final Four is here, and I have a very sneaking suspicion that the Long Islanders are going to upset the Lightning in 6 games. If they do wind up winning, it has to be accepted that Tavares was the guy holding the Long Islanders back this whole time. I mean, that and a lack of a solid coaching system, but it's more fun to just square it all in Tavares. Anyways, about the Red Wings, looks like Sider's partner with Rogla, Jelena, is headed to Carolina. With the current defenseman and UFA defenseman, who would be an ideal partner for Moritz Seider? Zdeno Chara, if the Red Wings want to go for a big swing, and I don't think they'll get this guy, Jamie Alexiak's name has been thrown around. He'll go to it. Some team will pay him a lot of money because he's a hot commodity right now.
And for a lot of years, and he's like 28, 29 years old. So that's big fat nope, unless they can keep him on a short contract. Yeah, unfortunately, I think Sider's partner is coming from in-house, which is just depressing.
Also, please consider adding Wind Wheel Podcast brand hats, athletic tanks, beach towels, inflatable beach balls, koozies, and some other summer stuff so I can spontaneously shove the brand into everyone's eyes on the gram and Twitter. I'll hang up and listen. We are working on that. I pulled together a sample of a dad hat, and it's the first hat that I've done that has actually come out well, so that might hit the store soon. C-Nod says,
I want a bucket hat.
Oh yeah, we do. We can do that. C-Nod says, no question about it. Vegas, Colorado was an amazing series. I'm sad they couldn't make it go 7. On to your favorite topic, trade rumors. I've seen an article or two about the Rangers maybe wanting to move on from Kakko to get a more established player. Do you see a Kakko-Verana deal? If New York wants to do it, sure, but
yeah, it's not happening.
I actually can see New York trading Kakko to accelerate the rebuild. I don't.
Yeah, I could see it. Verana's not enough because Kakko's potential is through the roof.
Jake Nagy says the Ken Daniels interview was one of my favorite all-time episodes. I really enjoyed how candid he was. Did it surprise you guys how honest he was about the rebuild? Yeah, there were a few points where he dished out a lot more than what we were expecting, which I thought was fantastic. But the rebuild stuff was really, really great. I think that was something he was surprised. That was surprisingly transparent.
Yeah, and I was happy how open he was, because we don't hear as fans or even media what really goes on behind the scenes. And obviously we had expressed our concern over the Red Wings scouting the last decade or so. To hear that there was a lot of change over there was new information to us, which was good information to have, and overall pretty positive information.
Eric Boyle says, with the Islanders in the Final Four for the second year in a row, I think they've established that they're not a fluke. Are they a blueprint for building a contender with depth but no game-breaking superstar talent, or are too many factors in their success, like Barry Trotz, not reproducible? I think, as we talked about earlier this episode, I mean, reproducible is a funny concept, but in general, yeah, that's the kind of... You need a lot of good talent in a lot of places if you don't have more than one bona fide superstar. And a good coach certainly helps. But yeah, like Brad mentioned, there's a lot of blueprint-like pieces there for teams who want that style of play. Clint Benesh,
be careful about selling their talent short. I will repeat that. I can't stress that enough. Yes, they don't have the Nathan McKinnons, Connor McDavid's of the world, but their players are better than they get credit for.
Clint Benesh says, hypothetical, Sabres want to get out from under Skinner's $9 million per year contract through 2027. They packaged Skinner with this year's first overall. What would be the return they should receive back? Not much. It's a lot of years at $9 million. I mean, I don't trade the Red Wings 23rd overall pick for that. Right? Like, am I crazy in saying that?
Second round pick was what my gut immediately told me. But that being said, the position Buffalo's in, I think they're better off just making the pick.
If this is a different draft, you know, we're talking one draft back, a couple of drafts forward here, then I think I'm a lot more tempted to give up more there. But yeah, Not this year. Lonnie Zone says, if a traded pick wins the lottery, which team is charged with having one of their 2 and 5 years lottery wins used up? If it's the team that gets to use the pick, doesn't that mean you can burn both in the same year? Not that that's the worst thing. And if it's the other team, won't it be that much harder to get first round picks? Thanks for everything you guys do. So I don't think the NHL has specified that, but my intuition is that the team that originally owned the pick is who would move up. That's what my guess would be, but I don't know how the NHL would actually do it in practice. I'm not sure that they've specified that. We'll look into it. Reed says, hey, Ryan, Brad, and Shay. Thank you for the excellent and moving interview with Ken Daniels. I'm pretty new to the podcast. I put it on for the first time a few months ago, and my wife and I were amazed with its polish and humor, especially for a show with a pretty narrow Red Wings focus. It was so much more entertaining than other general hockey podcasts we tried. My wife, who I should note does not watch hockey, now gets upset if I ever listen to you guys without her. And a few weeks ago, she surprised me with name-level sponsorship. Thank you for bringing some much-needed levity and insight into what's been a pretty slogging rebuild. Reed and Reed's better half, thank you so much for that, those kind words. Really happy you're loving the show. And to get 2 votes of confidence in one house is a win for us. So thank your wife for us.
That is remarkable and a huge compliment, considering none of our 3 significant others listen to us, and I don't think we could pay them to do it.
Catherine and I did the game name 5 hockey players to Catherine yesterday.
Yeah.
Or no, Friday. And I won't completely say how that went, but it was not good.
Oh, man. Sebastian Aho counted for 2, though, so I will give her that. Philip Gastineau says Tampa's in a weird spot where they need to get under the cap but can't take back roster players and don't have any terrible contracts to trade. Trading Johnson or Killorn along with a first or second feels bad as well. What are your thoughts on dumping Point for a plethora of picks, gets them out of their cap situation without losing assets, and restocks their cupboards? What would you trade to get Point, knowing that it will relieve Tampa of their cap situation? My answer is I don't think they move Point. You don't move a star center like that.
You could argue he's their best player, which is really saying something. I think the only 3 players they're not going to move, 4 players, is Point, Kucherov, Hedman, and Vasilevsky. I think everybody else is on the table, right up to including Stamkos. I think, given that Johnson already went through waivers, he's going to be the prime candidate. Now, depending what happens with some of their other free agents, they might have to move more than that. McDonough would make sense to move just because he's a little older as well. So not a lot of people talk about him as a candidate to free up some cap space, but he could be one. It'll probably have to be multiple pieces. And yeah, they tried giving up Tyler Johnson for nothing last year, put him on waivers. Nobody claimed him. So despite him being a good player on not a horrible contract, it's not a good contract, but not a horrible contract, it's still going to take a sweetener to get him off the books. And with a flat cap, teams have learned their lessons, and they are not about to throw a life raft to a team that's ahead of them in the standings.
Lars, the prophet of the towering behemoth, says the Islanders are so boring to watch. Hockey hipsters claiming otherwise be damned. We'll watch the Isles and Habs play for the Cup shortly. ESPN and TNT will cancel all deals if that happens. Canceller of podcasts from Down Under says, "Good day, Dud Duds. Once again, we're in a draft spot where there is a choice and opinion divided. I'd like to see an episode where the day before we patrons give you how the top 5 pans out, and you each have to write down who you take without any groupthink. Submit it to me, then argue on air, but proper argue. Don't cave because Cop Guy won't stop talking. Golf Guy, this means you have to say something other than, huh, what was the question? Or what else is there to say?" All right, this is very real, and I just got to say I wasn't prepared for the very honest attack here, so Rowan, thank you for that.
I actually love this idea. Like, that's a really good idea.
Let's actually
do like
do
that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. We also have another idea in the works that's going to be something similar, but in a very different context, but I do like this a lot.
Now that the Isles are up 1-0 in the Stanley Cup semifinal, weird to say that, by the way. I need someone to fact check this, so please ask Steve Dangle. Am I correct in remembering that John Tavares left the Islanders, a team with back-to-back conference finals appearances, by choice to join perennial chokers, the 1967s, who haven't won a playoff round in, 17 years? Christ, where the heck were the NHL concussion spotters when that was going on? Also couldn't help but notice that Vasilevsky gave up 2 goals today, while Kyle Quincy didn't give up any. Maybe that trade wasn't so bad after all. God. Jersey time.
But in Tavares' defense, his current team now does match his pajamas.
And you can't beat the pajamas. Jersey time, pretty obvious. German Lidstrom will wear 53, but can you predict what number the following prospects will wear? Raymond should be easy. Albert Johansson and Johnny Bergeron. Go.
Raymond, I've seen him wear 18 and 26, but I've seen him wear 18 more. So that's going to be my guess. Bergeron's easy. I've only ever seen him wear 48, I'm pretty sure. So we'll just run with that. Johansson's the interesting one because I've seen him wear a few numbers. I think the most recent one I've seen him wearing was 33. So I don't know if Draper will let him do that, given that he's still in the organization. So I'll say 33 or 23.
Yeah, I just looked it up. He is 33. Yeah, I imagine 18. I think 48 is a great number. I think that's a really cool number. I have no idea why. Vax Waxed and actually Adrian Dater says, prick guy, cop guy, and sometimes Shea Weber, you know that I know you're gamers and all this, and you know I'm just thinking out loud as far as in your shoes right now, and it's like, all right, we've done all we can do, we've done all the podcast planning we can do, maybe you know, just fuck it. We'll just go in next year and just not think anymore and just record this thing when we don't think so much. Is that good? Am I on the right path with all this? Like, maybe you guys are thinking too much.
Are you sharing whatever you're having? Because I'm interested.
Brad, did you not see this?
No.
Oh my goodness.
I am. Yeah. I assume it has something to do with Dater, hence the name. And I know Adrian Dater in general is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know specifically what this is referencing.
This is the. Oh, I'm going to send it to you right now. Mute yourself and legit watch this right now. This was
so excited.
This was the post-game press or the post-series press conference, and this was a question that Nathan McKinnon got from Adrian Dater, and you can understand how it went on Twitter. So I just DM'd it to you. I'm going to keep going here. Jake Jarvis says, great job on the Ken Daniels interview. I loved it. Would have loved to get his take on the shitty Valley Sports Detroit scoreboard if he's privy to any plans to change it for next season. Maybe the next time we'll ask him about that. Time for some Reddit questions. RG6EX says it's pretty obvious that Evan has to introduce himself as Shea Weber from now on, right? Can't go against the great Ken Daniels. Yeah, I'm pretty disappointed, Evan, that you didn't open with, and I'm Shea.
I don't know what to do anymore. Do I break tradition or go with some new meta name? I don't know.
I think Ken dictated it. I think Brad just heard the interview question. You good, buddy?
Holy shit, McKinnon's reaction was all of us.
McKinnon? No. What?
Wow.
CJ Martini says, is there any way you guys can explain how Tampa got around the cap? I know someone was on IR, but how can they be 12 million above for the playoffs? Would like a quick and dirty explanation. The quick and dirty explanation is the cap does not count for the playoffs. They had that person on IR for the entire regular season, and they brought them back for the first game of the playoffs. They more or less intentionally timed it so that was their return, so they didn't have to worry about the salary cap. And it's a move that's been used before. This was one of the more egregious examples. Chicago's done it before, I think multiple times with both Kane and Keith in the past. It's a loophole, and teams are going to keep exploiting it. HZ40 says, what do you think the plan is with Fabry? I love him, but he's a UFA in 1 year, and I'm not too sure what Stevie's thoughts are on these 24 to 26-year-olds other than our captain. I don't think there is a bona fide plan with Fabry. I think he's a good player who makes a good impact on this team. I'm not going to say he's unmovable, because if someone comes in with a Mantha Vrana level deal, you move him for that price, but you don't try to sell him for nothing, right? So I think it's up in the air.
Yeah, his age suggests that, and his pending UFA status, that if a contender's willing to pay a first-round pick for him at the deadline, you move him. I love Robbie Fabry. But I don't know. There's two sides to this argument. There's a good chance he will command some really good value at the deadline, and you can't ignore that. But there's also you still need guys on the other side of this rebuild. There are guys that are going to play during the rebuild and after, and this won't be a 100% brand new team. So is he a candidate to keep around to be the quote-unquote veteran presence when this team is young and getting good? Absolutely, he's a candidate for that. But at the same time, if, Minnesota, hey, we're not scoring enough goals. Here's a first round pick. Please help us. You have to do that. Like, you have to. Would I move Fabry straight up for a second round pick? Probably, but that's where the debate comes in of where do we get more value?
And I'm just going to answer one more here because I think this is a question I've seen in different shapes and forms over the last little while. From Meshu Gojira says, do you think Edmonton will give up their first and or Broberg in a trade for Neal's contract? I think I can understand why that might be on the board for some people, but I think after Ken Holland saw the thumping that this team got, he will not be interested in mortgaging high-end assets like that. He'd rather pick the players or use it to bring in an impactful player right now. So I don't necessarily think so. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. We will be back with you midweek with hopefully a fun themed episode for you, one that we've been meaning to get to for a little while. We'd like to thank everyone who listened, all our new listeners after the Ken Daniels episode. Welcome to the show. And thank you so much for all of our returning listeners for supporting us. Our name level Patreon supporters, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Brett Bailey, Terry, driver of Crying Ryan Hannah's Banana Slam-a-Jamathon, Taylor Tagel, Brandon M, Citizen High Five, Craig Kibble, Greach, Han Ali, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jacob Turner, Jake Kiefer, Jeremiah Dobo, Joe Santangelo, Justin and the Angry Mob, Kaylin Wood, Cody Stark, Kyle Hashman, Kyle McClure, Matt McKay, Matthew M. Rice, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Brendan's fun name with his crypto coins. He's trying to get me the same. Say Scott Martin, Stacy Lynn, Zach Spring, Andrew Bohan, Sam Bankson, Adam, I wish I could finish like Ernie, another former junior goalie turned golfer, Antonio Gracias, Colorado 14ers, Connor Leighton, Dave W., Evans Bingo Card, Jeremy Brocker, John Evans, Joseph Minema, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Matt Keeler, Oh Yeah Daddy, As Good As It Gets, Reed, Stan Olson, Trevor Pevivar, Vaxed, Waxed, and actually Adrian Dater. That's all. Thank you so much. And by the way, Stacy, also welcome to name level sponsors. We'll see you guys midweek.